Hello, everyone at the Human MOOC. I'd like to welcome Catherine Cronin, who will be joining us today to talk about social presence. And Kathleen is an open educator and a researcher who is currently on break from teaching to finish her PhD. And she's been teaching and doing research in online learning for several years, and we are really, really excited and honored to have her be a part of our Google Hangout series. So with that, I will turn it over to Catherine and remind everyone that if you're viewing, you can post your questions into the question and answer sidebar. You can also post things on Twitter. I'll be monitoring that. And we do have space for up to 10 people. So if anyone actually wants to participate inside the Hangout, you can just contact me on Twitter at Prof. Patrice, and I will send you the link to join us. So thank you, Catherine.
Thank you so much. Greetings, everybody. It's 5 p.m. in Galway and pitch dark here. It's a great privilege to be part of Human MOOC. I was just saying to Patrice when we were getting warmed up before we went on air here that I hate just zooming into a course or an event and like to be part of it, at least somewhat. So I haven't been as much a part of Human MOOC as I would have liked, but I've been checking out the tweets and the beautiful visual syllabus even before it went live, and just so impressed with the course and what you're all trying to do. So kudos to the team that put this together and to all of you who are participating. As Patrice said, I call myself an open educator and researcher. I've been teaching online for quite a long time, since about the mid-90s, starting with the Open University. And I have a diverse background. My original degrees are in engineering, and then I did a degree in women's studies, and I've kind of migrated my way into education research. And I'm currently doing my PhD in the area of open educational practices in higher education. So I'd like to reiterate what Patrice said for those of you who are joining this Hangout live, that I'd really love if more people joined the Hangout, because I really have just a few thoughts that I wanted to share, but I was hoping that it would be more of a conversation rather than a presentation. So I'll start with a quote which I often share in presentations where I talk about open education, network learning, and in this case, social presence, and that's a quote by Joi Ito, which I think is quite provocative in its own way. He says, "I don't think education is about centralized instruction anymore. Rather, it is the process of establishing oneself as a node in a broad network of distributed creativity." And for me, that quote works at one level, in that it shifts the dynamic from imparting education and content to all of us as learners, as part of a broad network of distributed creativity. I love that idea. But of course, we're more than just nodes. We're networks ourselves, and we're also human. And I think that's the part of this MOOC that really appeals to me, and why I was happy to accept the invitation. Glynis Cousin talks quite powerfully about the emotional substructure of teaching and learning. And for me, that gets to a lot of what I think social presence is all about. For me, social presence is basically me as a learner saying, me as a co-learner, in a situation where I might be teaching online, saying, I see you and you see me. And whatever it takes to try and do that. We often talk about tools, and it's a trope at this stage that we say, let's not talk about technology. The pedagogy drives our technological choices and our tool choices. But what drives our pedagogical choices? Those are often our teaching philosophies, or our values as educators, in our values as human beings. So do we think it's important that we connect with each other as human beings? Now, most everyone who's probably going to be watching this this video, whether live or delayed, believes that, because you're participating in this MOOC. But not everyone does. So I don't like getting hung up about choices, about tools or technologies. I really think, let's talk about values. Let's talk about what we're trying to do with our students together. Create trust. I would like to let students know that I care about each and every one of them. want to see them and meet them where they are, wherever they are. And I'd also like students to see me, and learners to see me. So in that sense, I think it's important to share some of myself, to share what some of my values are. If I make choices about how to teach, whether that's online or in person, I explain those choices. You know, this is why I'm asking you to do this. What do you think? So establishing that relationship of trust and care, and indeed love. I mean, I feel that I wouldn't be teaching if I didn't feel a love for it, not just my subject, my discipline, what I'm talking about, but each and every person that I'm teaching. I think Michael Wesch is a great example of that. He talks about that. So I don't know, Patrice, if you want to maybe interject anything or ask any questions. I'm happy to go on, but I'd love to have it be a conversation.
Well, when you think about establishing trust in your online courses, can you share with us a little bit about what your definition of trust is, and how how do you know when you've established a relationship of trust?
Yeah, that's interesting, and that gets at one of the differences, I suppose, between teaching online to teaching in a room full of people, because very many people who I know who don't teach online say, well, how do you know? How do you know that those students are those students, when they send you something? And I think that it gets down to identity and expressing our identities, and allowing the students to express theirs. So, for example, inside a VLE or a learning management system, we prescribe students' identities. In our case, it has to be the name that's on the birth certificate of the student. So they sign in with their student number and their password and so on. And that's the only identity that they can have. If we step outside those bounded online environments to open online environments, for example, all of us as learners, students and educators, have freedom to identify ourselves however we wish, by name, by avatar, and by so on. And I think providing students that kind of choice to express themselves and be themselves is part of establishing that trust. This is where the connection between social presence and openness comes for me. That's why I'm an advocate for open education. I think that many times students, in my case, I'll talk about undergraduate students come to higher education with established online social identities, oftentimes very confident. But it's important for us to help students to develop more confident identities as scholars, as researchers, as soon-to-be professionals, as professionals, if they come to us already as professionals, and as citizens. So modeling those practices and helping students to develop those practices is part of what that trust and social presence enables.
Okay, thank you. And sometimes we talk about creating social presence and making, last night in Patrick Lowenthal's discussion, we talked a little bit about the differences between, or whether there were differences in the interactions between community and collaboration and social presence. And the idea that sometimes community, maybe we don't want community, but community can sometimes be a bad thing. And I was wondering if you could, speak a little bit about how, in some cases, sometimes people may feel, if there is possibly a very strong community within an online course, some people can feel left out, or maybe they're not sure, how to join in. And so how do we create a social presence where everyone feels welcome?
Yeah, I think you almost answered that question. It's actually being aware of that. It's at different levels, isn't it? I think of cases where you're together for a longer time, say a learning community. Now, in this case, you're only together for a few weeks, so it's different. But in cases where you're together for several weeks, like a semester or a year, quite often behaviors will change. So people who start out being quite resistant maybe to sharing or to joining synchronous connections online, but just want to observe and to learn, eventually become willing or more confident to engage in other ways. Now, in the case where you're only together for a few weeks, perhaps that doesn't happen, but I still think modeling not just engagement, but modeling care and attention for people who are lurking is important. So, you know, I said to you before we started this hangout, I really wanted anybody who's willing to, you know, to join the hangout. Now, I know that many people won't, but I'd like every single person, you know, to feel welcome to join. And likewise on Twitter, you know, I was just engaging a little bit on Twitter today. Yes, I will tweet to people that I know, but, you know, many of my tweets will be, you know, to anyone who might be tuning into Human MOOC. It's easy. It's easy to be casual and cozy with the people that we know well. But I think it's important when we're in open public spaces to be speaking, you know, openly and to all as much as possible.
And in your research, you know, sometimes we think of the importance of social presence and other aspects of an online course. And we talk about it making it more engaging and increasing persistence. But do you have any thoughts on the impact it has on the actual learning that takes place in the course?
The impact of social presence or creating community?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, my research at the moment, I mean, I've kind of two different tracks. One is as an open educator and the other is my own research. The research that I'm doing at the moment is speaking with academic staff about how they use online tools and spaces, you know, bounded and open and across that whole continuum for learning, research, and teaching. And some of the interesting things that have come out of that are that negotiation of the personal and professional line. So, you know, we all use different tools. Some use Facebook, some use Twitter, some use academia.edu, some use LinkedIn, you know, whatever tools are available to us. They change all the time. And many of us who work in education are wondering, you know, which of these tools should I use? How should I use them? And how are other people using them? And there's some bit of anxiety around that. That's certainly something that's emerging early in my research. So the people who aren't using social media, who say, I'm really busy, you know, I'm overburdened, I have loads of students, you know, I'm teaching a lot of courses, I don't really have time to use social media right now. There's a bit of anxiety there because they think that they should be. And likewise, some people who are really tuned in, who are using academia.edu and ResearchGate, and they're on Twitter and they're blogging, you know, sometimes there's anxiety on that side because those people are saying, you know, it's another thing that I have to update. And that whole idea about Howard Rheingold's notion of infotension, you know, maintaining a lot of different presences online can also be anxiety producing. However, the people who are using social media and are paying attention to, you know, creating social presence online and speak about it positively, say that they get to know their students in a bigger and richer and deeper way. So, you know, if you're helping students to develop their authentic voice in whatever discipline you may be in, they have a fuller picture of those students through their connections with them, either through blogging or Twitter or whatever. So, you know, measuring that is very difficult. I know Laura Gogia is doing some work on that, among others. You know, how do we measure that? There are various ways, but certainly, you know, through conversations with people and through my research, it's obvious that it does enrich learning.
And we have a question from Rick Bartlett, and he asks, I teach adult graduate students in 6-week intensive formats. Any ideas for how to build social presence in 5 weeks?
Good question. I'd love to know how you're doing it already. A couple of things I think that are as applicable to 5-week courses as they are to semester courses, and that is presenting oneself as a learner. I think that's probably one of the most powerful things I've done as an educator. So, you know, that's saying that and expressing that to students, but it's also modeling it. So if you have a relationship with another educator who's an expert in something and you invite them into your course, you know, like this, you know, via a Google Hangout, and you're asking that person questions, you are showing yourself to your students, as a learner and asking questions alongside them. If you do Twitter chats with your class, again, one of the most powerful things I've done in relation to Twitter chats was to do it in the context of a scheduled class. So if a scheduled class is 2 hours, we had a half-hour, 45-minute Twitter chat. We spoke about it together before the chat. Had the chat, we all asked questions, many people just watched, and then processed it after the chat. So again, just kind of nesting that networked activity within our classroom group. The Joy Ito quote that I shared talked about individuals being nodes in a broad network of distributed creativity. But I think when we gather with our students as a group or a community, and that group is a node in the network, through your, through the course code hashtag or wherever it might be, that's very powerful. Because the group, whether the individuals in that group are active and tweeting or not, people are responding to them, via the class, and the class has a voice. And, that kind of modeling, I think, is very important.
And I love that idea of nesting the activity in the classroom. That makes it safe for everyone, and everybody gets
Indeed.
to participate.
Yeah.
I have another question for you on Twitter. It's from Mary Loftus. How do we create a welcoming environment and build community online?
Mary is one of the best proponents of that I know, actually. I mean, Mary, I would love if you tweeted in some of your ideas, because I think you're a great role model in that respect. A couple of things that I just mentioned are ways to do that. Reveal oneself as a learner, reveal oneself as vulnerable, reveal oneself as more than someone who's just a lecturer for whatever that module may be. Now, all of us have different personal, professional ways that we want to navigate that personal, professional boundaries. Some of us will talk about our kids, our dog, our holidays, or whatever. Some of us won't want to do that, but we'll be happy talking about other things that reveal ourselves, our values. But to me, I think that is that's the heart of it all. Is that willingness, that humility, to show that we're learners, we're vulnerable, and we're not just a teacher, of the students. We're there to guide, we're there to teach, but we're more than just that. And I like to think about the relationships that I may have with my co-learners or my students beyond that 4 or 6 or 12-week course. I mean, that motivates a lot of my choices. So, when I'm working with undergraduates, I say, it's great. When you leave the university, you'll have a degree and a lot of friends and some great memories, but you should have a lot more than that. You should have a personal learning network, relationships with people who you can continue to learn from. And I'd like to be part of that.
And when we think about, kind of humanizing our online courses and creating social presence, I think a lot of us jump to creating video or having live sessions because that's the space where, we can feel like, people can hear our voice, they can see us, we can demonstrate a different level of care than we can, say, through an asynchronous chat. But the other side of that is that, in many parts of the world, YouTube videos don't play, or, they don't have an internet connection fast enough to, really play the videos. There are issues of time zones. So do you feel like, that aspect is necessary to really create social presence, or do you think that you can do it, or do it just through I shouldn't say just, but asynchronously through text?
I don't think it's necessary at all, actually, and I don't think that even if we have asynchronous video chat, that automatically establishes social presence, because oftentimes it doesn't. A course that I worked on with Mary Loftus, who was just interacting there for many years, was an asynchronous text chat based master's degree here at NUI Galway. And the things I just mentioned about presenting oneself as a learner, seeing students, really seeing students, and inviting them to share themselves, expressing our values, talking, asking students to share things that are meaningful for them. And all of that can be done in text-based systems. All of that can be done in text-based systems. And it's particularly powerful if we enable student choice, student choice about topics, student choice about the modes and media that they choose for their assessments. Inviting that, responding to that, because that reveals, some of our students to us, as well as the other way around. So no, I certainly don't think video is necessary.
Okay. I think that's an important point for a lot of people, because again, that can either scare some people off or exclude some people from the whole process if they don't, for whatever reason. It seems like we frequently jump, it's what you said at the very beginning of our conversation. We frequently jump to the tool and forget about the, the pedagogy.
Yeah, and the values.
Yes. And I have another question for you. It's from Justin Mara. I work with 10th to 12th grade high school students who are incredibly reluctant to break out of nested environment of the classroom. What strategies have you found effective breaking the herd mentality in learning asynchronously?
That's a really interesting question. It's not just with that age group, of course. Getting back to what I just said, I mean, connected learning, I don't know if Justin would be familiar with the connected learning works. Justin, you might, I don't know, was that a tweeted question?
No, it was a Q&A panel here.
Okay. Connected learning, I think, is very powerful, particularly with students that age, because we may not find that students are confident to express themselves, in the herd around, the subject that as we present it in our discipline. But if we ask the students to present their voice around something that they're really passionate about, something that they're really interested in, be it sport or exercise or drama or skating or whatever it might be, that's an entry point into where students know that their authentic voice and passions can be expressed. So if it's always around the topics that we choose and the modes that we choose with the tools that we choose, then it's going to be really difficult to get people to express themselves, to express who they are, and to try and develop that social presence amongst the group. So as much choice as possible, I think, is key. Within whatever assessment frameworks there are, and I know they're different in secondary school and in third level, but there should be some freedom there.
Have you had any experience with trying to engage other faculty into the importance of creating, instructor presence and social presence, where, they might feel like that's maybe, not important or not, not their job?
Yeah, I was academic coordinator of that online master's program for many years, and worked with many faculty around those kinds of things. One of the things that I tried to do in that role was to try and establish a community of those facilitators, because I think we fall into the role, if we're the coordinator, the instructor, the facilitator, whatever word you want to use, we think that's our role, to communicate that or to get that message across. Whereas we can facilitate that happening peer to peer if we create, environments and occasions where fellow facilitators or teachers or lecturers are doing those practices that we think are good, and enabling them to model and help their peers. Oftentimes that's a lot more powerful, and that happens in the classroom as well. When there are just a few students who might be speaking in that authentic voice or tweeting or in the discussion forum, those are the people who are emboldening, maybe the students who are about to try it next. It's not me. It's in most cases it's their peers.
And we both have a similar STEM, engineering background. Have you had any experience with, the impact that developing social presence can have on keeping in women, more engaged in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math courses, and specifically with do you see any benefits with women taking some of those courses online?
Yeah, I mean, this could be another half-hour discussion for me. And you and I have talked about this before. There are 30 years of research which show that not just women, but all underrepresented groups in STEM benefit and flourish in environments where there's more there's more teamwork, more egalitarian ways of teaching and learning, more opportunities to develop STEM solutions that are of social value and not just are about robots, rockets, and racing cars. So I think that's a model for for all of education. And as I said, these are not new things. There's 30 years of published research around that. Unfortunately, that's about changing culture when it comes to some of the STEM disciplines, not all. And changing culture is difficult. But that's this enterprise that we're all involved in, and we keep going.
Okay, and we're just about nearing the end of our 30 minutes, but I think just to to wrap up, I'm wondering if we've talked a lot about the importance of being vulnerable and showing that caring side for student, and I'm wondering if there may be people who are wondering either like, I'm not sure I would feel comfortable making myself vulnerable, or I'm not really sure how I show a student online asynchronous that I care. Do you have any any thoughts on on that for people who are maybe struggling with getting their heads around how they might approach this?
It's a tough question to answer, but I think it comes down to the personal and the human, I suppose. And the people that I've learned the most from have been peers and friends, whether they be online or here where I live, who are doing things that I think that's really exciting, that's really interesting. I'd love to be able to do more about that, and speaking with them and learning from them, because they understand my context, they understand who I am, where I'm coming from. So this is why I think online courses like this and Twitter, when it works well, can be so powerful, because we can see things. I had some germs of ideas many years ago, and I got connected on Twitter, and I saw people trying them and writing about them and blogging about them. I thought, hey, they tried it. I could probably try that as well. They emboldened me, and I developed relationships with a lot of those people. So again, I don't think there's anything that is in a book or or that I could say in a couple of minutes. But if you see someone online or in your environment who's doing something that you think is in the direction that you want to go, I'd say just connect with them and see what you can learn from them. And it goes from there. Your network will grow.
Okay. I think that that's one of the great things about not just the human MOOC, but courses like that, is I really see it as that safe space where people can try some of these try these things out, experiment in a safe place, and what you're saying, really learn from each other. And I would reiterate that the importance of reaching out to other people and making those connections and increasing your network.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we really appreciate your time. That was a wonderful conversation, and I hope everyone continues the conversation on Twitter. So thank you again, Catherine, for joining us.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all the people who are participating and for the questions. And I'll stay tuned into Human MOOC. I'm enjoying it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.